if you follow his philosophy, you will be called a Cartesian. So Cartesians. Descartes thought that we are divided in between two separate substances, body and mind, or body and soul. The word mind is really another word for soul, the same as psyche in Greek. We have a body and a soul. And suffering and feelings and thoughts can only take place in the soul, not in the body. The body is just matter. The body is like any other matter, like rock. There's no feeling in matter. Whenever you feel pain or suffering, that feeling takes place in the soul. Of course, this goes very well with a Christian understanding of the world. Only humans have a soul, an immortal soul that survives death. Animals do not have an immortal soul. Animals do not have a soul, for Descartes. So animals are just bodies, which is to say they are machines. But they are excellent machines, incomparably better than any machines that we humans could create, because they have been made by the hands of God. So we can create robots, machines that interact with humans. Back in his time, they had the cuckoo clocks. That was the big invention. And so they could actually be pretty creative with that, imagining that over time, in the long run, new robots, more perfect robots would be created, and they could imitate really human behavior and act like humans and interact even linguistically with us humans, but they'd be robots. And one day we might even be able to create a perfect robot that looks like a human, Terminator-like kind of robot, but it would be a robot. That Terminator would never have any feeling, any suffering, any pain, while we humans do. Now, animals are those robots. They're machines. Therefore, we have no moral concern for their suffering because they do not suffer. That's Descartes' position. How can we tell a robot from a human being? Well, the main test is language. Language. We humans have language. Animals do not have language. We talk sometimes about animal language, but in reality that is an analogy. We don't really mean they have language. They have a communication system through sounds, signals. We'll say more about this later. But we have language. Now, some humans cannot speak because they're deaf, mute. They lack the organs, or their organs are damaged. But they communicate through sign language. While some animals are able to speak, like parrots, magpies, but they are not creative. Their language is not creative. Their language simply is a repetition of what they've heard, and they can make no sense of it. So here you have the two tests that Descartes proposes. Language and the creative aspect of language. We humans will always be able to respond to new situations. But a machine will be limited in the number of situations that it can respond to. So even if we created the perfect robot, that perfect robot would have to be programmed first to interact with us. The robot would not create any new sentences. The robot would not create any new responses. Everything the robot did or said to us would have to be programmed beforehand. Correct? Well, we could never program a computer, a machine, to be able to interact in any and all situations with a human. Why is that? Because in order to do that, we would have to come up with a program that would include all possible combinations of words, so as to create any and all possible sentences in response to any interaction with a human. We cannot possibly do that. Because if we did that, that means we would have been able to write all possible books ever that will be written in the future. Okay? All poetry, all novels, all science, all everything. Because a book in the end is just a new combination of words. So we could never do that. We could never program a machine to interact in any new creative, original situation with humans. That would be an impossibility. Okay? Let me read from Descartes so you can hear in his own words how he sees this matter. He says, the body is a machine which, having been made by the hands of God, is incomparably better arranged and possesses in itself movements which are much more admirable than any of those which can be invented by men. If there had been such machines possessing the organs and outward form of a monkey or some other animal without reason, we should not have had any means of ascertaining that they were not of the same nature as those animals. On the other hand, if there were machines which bore a resemblance to our body and imitated our action as far as it was morally possible to do so, we should always have two very certain tests by which to recognize that for all that, they were not real people. So we have a real monkey and we have a perfect robot we just created that looks like a monkey, acts like a monkey, behaves like a monkey. How could we tell? He says there's no way to tell because essentially they are the same thing. But now we have Terminator and we have Matthew. Can we tell between the two of them? Imagine some Terminator that look like him. Well, he says yes. There are two tests we can have to tell between Terminator and Schwarzenegger, to put the original example. What are those two tests? Well, first, that they could never use speech. The robot, Terminator, could never use speech or other signs as we do when placing our thoughts on record for the benefit of others. For we can easily understand a machine's being constituted so that it can utter words and even produce some responses to action on it of a corporeal kind, which brings about a change in its organs. For example, if it is touched in a particular part, it may ask what we wish to say to it. If in another part, it may exclaim that it's being hurt, and so on. Now, this is really unbelievable. He's writing in the 17th century, and he's imagining robots that can interact and talk to people, like 3 centuries ahead of him. Right? But it never happens that it arranges its speech in various ways in order to reply appropriately to everything that may be said in its presence, as even the lowest type of man can do. And a second difference is that although machines can perform certain things as well or perhaps better than any of us can do, they always fall short in others, by the which mean we may discover that they did not act from knowledge, but only from the disposition of their organs. So yes, a calculator can do math better than any of us can, but that's all a calculator does, math. If you try to do something with a calculator, it won't work. You can have a perfect computer, it'll do certain things perfect. But when it comes to something which hasn't been programmed in the computer, that's it. Can't do anything, okay? So, for while reason is a universal instrument which can serve for all contingencies, these organs have need of these organs, he's talking about the computer or these new instruments, have need of some special adaptation for their particular action. By these two methods, we may also recognize the difference that exists between men and animals. For it is a very remarkable fact that there are no humans, he means, so depraved and stupid without even accepting idiots. Now, idiots was the old-time word for people with a mental handicap. There are not, without even accepting idiots, that they cannot arrange different words together, forming of them a statement by which they make known their thoughts. So every human, no matter in what situation, can come up with some kind of communication, some linguistic communication. While on the other hand, there is no other animal, however perfect and fortunately circumstanced it may be, which can do the same. It is not the lack of organs that brings this to pass, for it is evident that magpies and parrots are able to utter words just like ourselves. And yet they cannot speak as we do, that is, so as to give evidence that they think of what they say. On the other hand, men who being born deaf and dumb are in the same degree, or even more than